It means a lot. I really value the opportunity to be reunited with the relatives. And I use, Bev, the word reunited because when we were part of the OSCE team on the ground in 2014, the eyes and ears of the international community, a lot of us felt that we were also the ears and eyes of the relatives who couldn't come to the crash site, who were, of course, in total despair. And every single shred of reporting, of evidence that we could, relay to them through networks like yourselves, I think was really, really important. And I've got to say, when it finally came to that day when the bodies were repatriated here and we had that long procession of vehicles carrying the remains, it felt like this big circle had been closed, that finally these victims were given some kind of dignity and return to their loved ones. And now here we are at the near the memorial site. And I think it was really, really important for the relatives 10 years after to get together. And a lot of them are discussing what is the path forward to justice as well, because a lot of them, of course, don't feel the justice has been served or that they have closure.
Yeah, and that is such an important point because it was so difficult, and you need to remind us a little of this, it was so difficult to necessarily piece all of this together to get to the point where people were found guilty of this crime, essentially. But to this day, they have not been held to account.
Right. I mean, 3 individuals have been convicted. They're believed to be in Russia or Russia-controlled territory. Russia has said they will not give them up. But, as I tell the relatives at every opportunity I can, Bev, I say, I think over time, people like them get careless. They may be flying somewhere, transit through a third country, and be nabbed. And then the second thing is, again, looking for that sliver of hope or light, is that regimes change over time. Sometimes they have a change of heart. We've seen in previous shootdowns where jurisdictions have actually said sorry and they have paid compensation. So let's hope that happens. But the big one piece missing here, which, by the way, we have to credit social media, citizen journalists, operations like Bellingcat, is that a lot of rock-solid evidence points to the decision of that Buk missile deployment all the way up to Mr. Putin. So there's a hope here that he will be held accountable someday as well.
Indeed, as you say, these things have a way of following their course. There is, of course, all of the authorities have talked about the fact that this remains, despite these people have been found guilty, that avenues of investigation will always remain open on this case.
Well, I certainly hope so. The relatives certainly hope so. I think, actually, I know that for a fact that when the Dutch did announce that the investigation is being suspended, it shocked a lot of them and made them very sad because we all know there's still a lot of evidence out there. Of course, that area is now totally inaccessible. But, as technology develops, as more people possibly leave those zones to come to Kiev-controlled territories, there's more evidence appearing all the time. So I don't think anyone should give up. But again, I think we can take heart in this advance of technology. I can point you also, Bev, to the shootdown of PS752, that Ukrainian airliner over Tehran. If it were not for social media, ordinary people taking photographs, geolocating, the Iranian authorities would not have been backed into a corner like they were. So we have to think about those types of developments as well.
Yeah. Well, you talk about how this, the guilt for this goes all the way to Putin's office. It's also a reminder, while we're into the 3rd year of this very confronting conflict for Ukraine, it's been going on for a very long time, the sort of hostility that Ukraine has been living with.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm mostly based in Odessa right now, and I can tell you the past month or so have been absolutely horrendous because the continuous bombing of critical infrastructure by Russia has created a huge power deficit in Ukraine. So people in most Ukrainian cities, including Odessa, are now going most of the day without power than with. And that's had a knock-on effect to small businesses, things like that. And that's on top of the multiple air raid siren alarms we get every day, as well as incoming rockets and drones. I'm actually very, very worried that we may reach a point in a few months as the weather cools that they won't repair it in time, and we'll have possibly another exodus of Ukrainians to Europe, the last thing that the continent can handle right now. So one more thing, of course, is with possible Trump administration coming in with G.D. Vance as his vice presidential pick, does not look good in terms of Ukraine making its own decisions when it comes to the negotiating table.
Yes, you do feel like there's this window that is closing for Ukraine to make some advances in this conflict, and at the same time, Russia knows that it can just sit this out to a degree.
Yeah, that's the typical Russian playbook, is to, try to run out the clock. And that's why it's so important that all allies of Ukraine, including Australia, do everything they can to give Ukraine what it needs. But a really, really two crucial things are needed right now. Is that I'm sure the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia would say, one is the ability to close the skies to incoming missiles. And then the second one is to give Ukraine the ability to strike deeper inside Russia. I think we're slowly moving to that point. Because those sites that Russia uses to strike Ukrainian territory need to be taken out. So hopefully allies of Ukraine will move quickly enough to make that happen soon.
Yeah. Michael, coming back to this sort of anniversary that you will be part of today, in your experience, has anything sort of brought together so many different nations? Because there were people from all over the world caught up in this tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard it described really well the other day as the shootdown of MH17 will be one of the defining mass crimes of our generation. It's also a crime like, for example, the murder of Mr. Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist in Turkey, will be remembered for a long time by our generation. So the tragedy has brought relatives together. Again, I saw a lot of them today, and they really depend on each other for a lot of support and for kind of getting together to actively lobby governments to make sure that this crime is not forgotten and that the pursuit for evidence and for justice continues. We also must remember the relatives of MH17. I mean, talk about lack of closure as well. That airplane disappeared reportedly off the coast of Western Australia. So, these two sets of groups of families have something in common, where they're still very, very actively hoping and looking for closure and for justice.
Yeah, which is sometimes very, very difficult to get. I'm sure this is going to be hard in many ways for you, but I think too, so many people are so grateful for the work that the international team that you were part of did.
Thank you, and we feel we were placed there for a reason. We were there at the right time. Myself, for example, I had covered Malaysia. I covered Malaysia Airlines Aviation. I'm of Ukrainian descent. So all of that came together, as did, the skills of other team members to really be a trusted ears and eyes of the international community to facilitate access for Australian investigators, the AFP, Dutch investigators, and also to, again, report every day, every few hours, what we saw on the ground, because that, I'm told by the relatives, really made a big difference at that very, very difficult time. So we're grateful for having had the opportunity to be there.
Yes, and we have been very grateful for you. As always, Michael, lovely to see you, and I hope the day plays out well.
Thank you so much.